Okay.
So we are here with Gracie Teo from Singapore, and we are launching into our exit interview. And the first thing I wanted to ask you are the stages of nervousness that you felt. So before you came, and then kind of when you were here for a little while, and then now, how relaxed you're feeling.
Okay. I think I got to know about this residency like 3 or 4 months before it actually started, so it was quite a fast turnover. I think at first I was excited because like I'll be getting to see like one of like the cultural capitals of the world. It'd be like interesting. But as it got closer to the date, like friends started talking and said, "Oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. You know, you got to, be smart and things like that." So the pressure got to me a little, and also I was like rushing at work, so I didn't have a lot of time to prepare and do a lot of research on the city. So I knew I was coming in a little bit like fresh. And then when I arrived, it was a smooth flight. Um, like when I got into the city, I felt the hecticness of the city, and I was a little bit like anxious because I felt like I haven't prepared very well. So the first week was like a little bit like anxious and rushed and like trying to figure out the transport system, which is actually a lot more complex than Singapore. And just trying to, and I think I put a lot of pressure on myself that I wanted to be a good traveler because like I had done some traveling in the past, and Singaporeans like the idea of like going out and seeing new things and like being a savvy traveler. So I gave myself a lot of pressure. Yeah.
And now that you've been here for a little over 3 weeks, how anxious do you feel in the city now?
I think I've adjusted a little bit. I think I've become more aware of like what was my internal myself and like what's like the atmosphere on the street, like how fast people are walking, or like how open people are, like in certain neighborhoods, like it's more residential, people are walking at a slower pace. How open people are, like whether they would stop and like help to give directions, or they would actually chat about something else. So it's more about like taking the time to adjust to a place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walking.
Fast.
You've done a lot of walking in the city.
Yes. Yeah.
And did you feel that it was a good opportunity to see things?
Yeah, I like walking to see a city, and I think like each neighborhood was different and it had character of its own. People were different. I like admiring the architecture, and because like New York has so much of it, so much.
That's another word that I'm going to give to you is architecture. So let's jump right to that.
Varied. Yeah, because I think one of the first few things I did was try to like look at tops of buildings and find landmarks and be able to navigate in the city. But like each building was so different. Like there was only a couple of things you could pick out as landmarks, like Chrysler Building or Empire State Building.
Most of the buildings in Singapore now are new, yes?
Yes.
So is there an older feeling to New York that was satisfying for you?
Definitely, yeah. I think a lot of people find scenes in New York familiar because they've seen it in media. I also had a little bit of a more personal connection because like I think my sister, when my sister, older sister was traveling, she liked New York a lot as well. She had a lot of photographs of New York in her room. So seeing things like the Flatiron Building, suddenly like came back like, oh okay, you know, I've seen this and I've seen this in my sister's room, yeah, I also like the sense that a lot of buildings have been preserved, and some of them have been preserved really well, because like Singapore went through a period where we lost a lot of heritage buildings.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, physical activity. Things like aerial yoga.
Challenging.
Tell me a few of them.
I think the activities that the poses that we did on the mat was okay, still familiar, but once we got into the harness, it was a little bit too difficult to orientate myself. So like trying to get into a full inversion, I think I had to relax more and let the harness take my weight. I felt I was still like carrying a lot of my own weight, so I didn't like manage to complete some of the motions. Yeah.
Did you enjoy?
I think I need another go at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the last session where we the last activity in that session was to lie in the aerial silk like a cocoon. So that was very relaxing, very calming. I think actually a lot of the participants enjoyed that. Yeah.
And other situations where you were dealing with physical activity?
I tried fencing on Monday.
Right.
So actually that went really well. Yeah, I was feeling a little bit tired when I got to the class, but there was like a whole range of activities to move our body first, and like play something with our teammates, and then to start doing small actions like doing on guard kind of poses, to do small actions, and to build it up progressively, that we were actually trying out the thrusting, and towards the end we actually also got to do a bout, so we actually like completed like a whole sequence, whole action. Yeah, so it felt real, and it felt like we were really engaging. Some of the people, they hooked themselves up to the electronic scoring system, and they were like testing out like, you know, how many points they scored and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Was this a normal situation? Do you normally do these kinds of things at home, or were these putting you in a new discomfort level?
I've not thought of fencing as something accessible. Thought it's only for like people with a certain interest or certain status to enjoy, like golf. Yeah, and I.
We'll have to send somebody to play golf too.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a sport with like a lot of history and etiquette to it, so it did seem a bit like intimidating to go and try something like that. Yeah. I think I've kind of like the other physical activities that I've enjoyed are like hiking, you know, things that don't need a lot of technical competence. So I've tried physical activities like that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Money.
Money.
Did you get any sense of being in New York? Because a lot of people look at New York as the money capital, as the capital of finance in the world. And we talk about it. There are a lot of different socioeconomic levels in New York, and I'm wondering how you felt about the difference between some people having a lot of money, and we're in such a small area, and you see this. Did you get any sense of, and if not, that's fine.
I think like the first few days, I didn't sense such a big discrepancy. I did see people who were living in difficult circumstances, and I felt for them. And usually I would rely on the host in the situation to indicate, okay, when is something genuine and when is something it's good to donate to. It's make a more conscientious effort to donate towards something. But it was, I think, after the second week, after going to a neighborhood like Upper West Side, and I started to see that, okay, there's a lot of people who can achieve success here, and they can be very comfortable with that success. And even as I walked the whole of the length of Broadway yesterday,
which is pretty impressive.
Survived. Thanks. The host I was walking with, John Barberis, was saying that there's people who are actually blind to all the different aspects of life on the street. Yeah. So, I think it's still taking some time to wrap around that there's such a large discrepancy in socioeconomic statuses in such a city, because Singapore has mainly been middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more when I travel out and I see it's a stark reminder.
Okay, so because there's kind of a similarity economically between Singapore and New York, that was not.
It was not
so,
super strong
yeah.
immediately. It's more like, okay, how do we? I try to put it in ways like, how do we act with grace? Yeah.
Right. So, is New York friendly?
It depends. I think the first few days when I was like feeling lost, I think some people like rolled their eyes at me. It's like, okay, why is this person like taking so long to get to one place to another? But I realized it was also like myself, like how open I was willing to be to ask for direction, to ask for help. I think once I started doing that, then it became more like a regular thing. Like people are always arriving in New York, or like they're going to a new place, or like something happened in the train line that day, so they're not taking the usual route. Yeah, so it was okay. Yeah, people were helpful. Yeah, it's like a couple of times, like when people realized I was like traveling to a similar neighborhood, they took extra time with me.
People offered help.
Yeah.
Similar to Singapore?
I think Singapore, we're quite receptive to tourists, because it's one of the things that our economic depends on. So generally, like, Singaporeans would like, if they spot a tourist, they'll help out. I'm not sure like how easy it is to strike up a conversation with a local as well, because people can be a little reserved, or sometimes depends on the area. If you're in the city, people are quite busy getting out on the day. But if you're in a neighborhood, then maybe some auntie or uncle, will be will be will be going about at a slower pace, and they might take time to chit chat with you. Yeah.
Americans tend to see Singapore as very much about rules and laws. Do you know that we have that image in our head? I think from years ago when there was a young boy and he spray painted cars, and it was very much in the news of him getting caned.
I remember this incident. Yeah.
So we sent you to the courthouse in New York. Tell me about your experience there.
Oh, okay. I think getting navigating inside the building was a little intimidating, because there were so many people in uniform around. I also saw on the first floor there were a lot of I think either the lawyers or their associates, they were talking very actively with their client, and they seemed to be very enthusiastic, and they're doing their best, whatever they're doing, they're explaining and making sure that the client understood things well, and they're working in their best interest. It wasn't that easy to find the room that had all the directory of the cases that day, because it was on the top floor. But when I got there, there were two cases that were opened for public hearing, and they were both not in the same building, so I had to go to another building and had to do another security check. When I got there, I was surprised at the size of the room, and I had such an impression from media how courtrooms look like, and then people have space to walk around and make their point. It was I think in the middle of a murder trial, and a scientist was trying to talk about the quality of materials that had been collected, and that there was some issue that it wasn't the results would not be conclusive because there's been some degradation to the materials. I thought that the prosecutor was having a hard time because he had to absorb the scientific language really quickly and try to find out where the loopholes were, or trying to help his client. And the judge was pretty hard on him as well. Yeah, and I noticed when the whole group of students came in, it became more like a performance. Suddenly all the staff were like, okay, now we've got to sound even smarter or sound even better. Yeah, so it was not like how a TV drama is. Actually, there's a lot of information. The jurors have a lot of responsibility to understand the information of a case. Yeah, and I can understand why it's a long going thing. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it? Was it worthwhile?
Oh, yes, yeah. I think it's one of the things that helped me kind of test what is a reality, film reels, and what is reality, what happens in someone's job, a daily life. Yeah.
How wrong is our impression of Singapore?
I think there were, just interacting with locals, the people who knew about Singapore, they seemed to have a good impression. they nodded positively, like when they heard where I was from. Um, I also think maybe because we're more similar age or similar generation, so they may have heard things like Singapore wants to be a startup nation, um, open to new things. I think when I was at a sustainable farming practice seminar, someone thought, "Oh, Singapore is very clean." Um,
Is it?
Generally, it is.
Uh-huh.
Like we try to maintain things as well as we can.
Is New York clean?
Um, I had a little challenge with that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
could see like there was different different areas of management. Yeah.
Different socioeconomic areas that get more attention from the city, maybe.
Fast. Yeah.
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 Okay. What about religion? Did you get any sense here of any sense of religion?
Um,
You went to a couple of activities that were not religiously based, but religiously associated.
I kind of thought that religion would not be a big part of city life. I think majority of people would be very secular or just very practical, very pragmatic. Um, I did see like there are people like Orthodox men, Orthodox Jews who are
Mhm.
walking around and they're still practicing in the city. I think going to the Quaker meeting was kind of refreshing because I tried meditation before, and for me it's a little bit of a struggle. But that 1 hour meeting at the Quaker meeting, the people who were meditating, maybe they've been practicing for a long time. I felt I could enter the calm a lot quicker, and I could actually feel that centering down that they were talking about. And I found that I could get perspective much quicker, like what was separate from myself and what were external influences around me, and even like the influences that I had experienced in Singapore, and I was carrying with me so much, and like within like that 10 minutes, like, oh, okay, I'm carrying that burden, but it's not necessarily my identity. Yeah, so that was pretty fast. And then I liked the experience so much, I stayed on for the Bible study, and like could hear the exchange in the group, like they studied a passage together, and everybody had really different points of view about the same passage, you know, and were very ready to accommodate each other's views. So I thought that was refreshing.
We have generally a much greater level of diversity than many countries just because we've got so many people coming from so many different areas. Did you find the diversity very obvious, satisfying, different?
I think it was like one of the things I was looking forward to coming to New York City, because it's something that is on Singapore's horizon, that we will be having even more complexity and more people arriving to come to work in Singapore. So I was curious, like how does New York continue to thrive and live with like all these exciting opportunities, and also like people with like strong views, and people who are ready to speak out, people who don't get a chance to speak out. I there's I think there's different levels of it. Like some places are more open, and people um, can speak more openly about their views or their convictions. Some places that you have to like take criticism for what you believe, and you have to let it slide off your back. You know, it's up to the individual to be resilient and let it slide off their back. I'm still trying to figure it out, because like even like seeing like the architecture being built, because it's a very saturated city, you know, and like yet every day there's new things that are coming up and being built. Like I think New York is going through an economic boom, architecture boom right now. Yeah, so it's like it's something that I'm still trying to understand, but it still seems very positive. Like it's like in a sense, in a very universal sense, like you cannot deny life. Life carries on. Life will find a way to thrive. You know? So it's whether the individual recognizes it and want to partake in it and come alongside, or whether we struggle with it. Yeah, maybe it's all aspects of it.
Okay. What was your favorite museum?
Sorry?
What was your favorite museum?
Oh,
You went to a bunch of museums.
hard to pick. I think the one that I anticipated the most was the Whitney Museum, because it had been renovated recently. But actually, I think it was like the Ruben Museum that I enjoyed the most, because it seemed a lot calmer, and there was a lot of care taken into how the place was decorated and arranged, and the staff were also seemed more engaged in what they were doing. They seemed happier. Yeah, so I think that was the museum that also had a strong impression on me.
Did you like the building or the art or the atmosphere the most?
I think it was the atmosphere. Yeah.
Not similar to an art museum in Singapore?
I think Singapore, maybe I'm not too sensitive to it anymore. Maybe like the larger museums, maybe they all appear to have a similar culture, because maybe I have an expectation that okay, it's a public setting, like all the staff should be able to like greet and accommodate like families, guests with like varying levels of interest and knowledge. Yeah, maybe a smaller organization might have more attention. Like the staff might have more attention and have more they probably have a lot more responsibility to distribute among themselves, so they might be more engaged.
This is a tough one. How have you changed?
I think I'm quite aware of the premise of the program, the fellowship program. I think I've been blogging in a very personal way. I've been quite conscious of it. I think I'm naturally inclined to introspection and things of this nature. But I realized that I can't force transformation also. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like one of the things that I was trying to to see if I could experience was breaking out of the way that I think, and see if I could experience new ways of thinking. Um, but it's been a bit harder to assimilate that. But I think I've just tried to journal as honestly as and be as true as I can, and that is as far as I can get at this moment.
Okay.
So a lot of things that were true to me actually came out and reinforced my natural characteristics. Yeah.
A lot of times when people are on a program such as this, they can make a psychological change from being home, and they can kind of be the new person that they want to be in an interesting way. Did you feel any of that?
I wanted to experience a little bit of that. I know like new places affords new freedoms. I think for the first couple of weeks I could experience that a bit. Yeah, but I think I still need a little work, because by the third or fourth week I could feel like some behaviors coming back, like trying to take on too much, or the feeling of being overscheduled, that I would try to do more things than I could normally do, things like that. So I think as an individual, it's a little bit hard to move forward in that way. I think as in the past I had done been in a chorus with a group, and having time for group discussion and things like that. Those things did help me experience change faster. Yeah. So doing this just myself, or the occasional discussion was a little bit more challenging.
Okay, there are two activities that people often will speak about. One is volunteering, and the other is therapy. We have all of our residents, all of our fellows, go to a therapist because we feel that it's an opportunity for people who have never experienced it to see what it's like, and for people who have, to give them a chance to maybe talk about some things or relax a little bit without not going into specifics. Which did you enjoy more, and talk about the other one?
I don't think So, which activity I enjoyed?
Well, either volunteering or therapy.
I think I enjoyed therapy, and it's because I felt I was in good hands. The other activity, I have volunteered before, so going to different organizations, I think I was more aware of how each program was run, and I felt like in each program, each task was different. I had to just take on something new in each task, and work with a different group, and work with a different style of leadership each time.
Therapy is generally not something that people in Singapore would do unless they specifically had a problem.
I think there's growing awareness of it. I think with the older generation, it's still not something that's favorable. It's not something that's discussed. There's still a lot of shame attached to it. With younger generation, how I kind of see it getting more accepted is that if you have a situation in life, if you can refer to someone who has some expert knowledge on it, you can go and consult with someone. But there's still a little bit of difficulty saying that you're going to consult someone because you have a problem, and saying that and a person being comfortable saying that they have problems. Yeah. So I mean, with younger generation, to say they are looking for life coaching also sounds more acceptable than saying going to someone with therapeutic expertise. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, volunteering then is a normal activity for people in Singapore?
I think it's more of my personal interest, my personal exposure.
Did you expect to see those kinds of activities here?
I think they were different. Some of the things were very different. Like a pantry style shopping. I think there are ways of treating people with dignity, and that was a very interesting way of like continuing to empower people. Volunteering in language was a bit familiar, like language practice classes was familiar to me. I think because of my interest in community development, I had like traveled a bit around Southeast Asia and also done things like teaching English or working with kids. Yeah.
You mentioned Chinatown in your blog, and you said that they speak primarily Cantonese and you speak Mandarin.
Yes, yeah. So in Singapore, a lot of the people from who have come from China, like the bigger dialect groups are Hokkien or Teochew, and in school we learn Mandarin. So that's the mother tongue that most Chinese people would speak. We went through a period where dialect was neglected, so a lot of the young generation don't speak their mother tongue anymore. So encountering like people in Chinatown and in New York, and a lot of people still are able to speak their dialect language besides Mandarin was quite encouraging. Also, I think like a couple of the shop owners were appreciative that I didn't speak Mandarin first. I tried to speak in Cantonese first. So they were appreciative, and they showed like a few other things to me. Yeah, and the other things that I found familiar was like the way things are displayed, like the way of using space. Yeah, and like I didn't get to try too much the food, so I can't really tell how authentic it is. Yeah.
Did you feel, I always find these situations interesting. For example, if we have an African American and they go to Africa, they find often that, excuse me, that they expected more of a familiarity because of heritage. And I wonder when people come here, or like when Americans go to certain places and they get pushed into an expat community or something, and all of a sudden they either feel like, oh, this feels comfortable, or, oh, this feels weird. Did you get any sense of the Asian community in New York, Chinatown in particular? Did it feel like a New York thing, or did it feel more actually Asian?
I didn't have very high expectations to find great affinity in Chinatown, because like I don't feel very Chinese myself sometimes. Yeah, and like going there, I felt like I was still a bit of an outsider, because the way I was observing the culture was still like seeing people gather at certain places, and they were playing checkers and things like that. It's actually there's a place in Singapore near Chinatown as well. Like people gather and they play that same type of chess, Chinese chess and games. But I don't feel that close to it anymore. I think when I was walking around Chinatown, I think the things that I kind of spotted was there was a art space, and people were setting up a show. And I popped my head in. It's like, oh, what's happening? So I didn't have a great like Chinese cultural experience and say, okay, this is definitely what makes me Chinese. Didn't. Yeah, so still.
Do Singaporeans, is that correct, Singaporeans, feel Chinese generally, or no?
I think like it's widely used that we're a mix between East and West, because a lot of our education is Western centric. You know, the remaining effect of the British administration. I think like in families there's different levels of like how people retain their Chinese culture. Yeah, maybe, but Chinese, we are also like the majority group, you know, so maybe I take a lot of things for granted, and maybe in like the other cultural groups like Malay, Indian, they actually may retain their culture a lot more strongly, and they also value extended family a lot more. Yeah. I think Singapore went through a period where a lot of families became nuclear, because in the 60s the population was rising too quickly. The government had a campaign to manage population, and said, oh, 2 children, 2 is good, 2 is enough. And a lot of families became nuclear after that. So
It wasn't a law like in China, it was just advice?
It was advice, but it was also very clear that if you had a third child, not the same privileges were extended. Yeah, so
Serious?
yeah, so yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it really depends like on how families want to continue practicing certain values and pass it on.
What caused the greatest culture shock for you, if you experienced that? Was it food? Was it transportation, people? Or did you not feel any sense of that?
I think it was traveling on the subway. So I got a little sense of it like when I was walking on the street, like people avoid eye contact, or or people put up a front and they're just getting about the day, like don't bother me. But some people would be more receptive, and if you ask for directions, like they would help. But getting on the train, people seem to be even more defensive. like their guard was a lot more up, like even they were like conscious of who they were entering into the carriage with. You know, if they didn't feel comfortable, they actually would walk a few carriages away and enter somewhere else. Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of like wondering, how does a city like live with such diversity and have an image that is very open and friendly, and then still have so much tension on enclosed spaces, you know. So I thought about it for a little while. I didn't have the guts to ask too many New Yorkers about it. Well, I think one of the ways I thought about it, because this is like urban cities, you know, there will be ways that people find to cope with like living in such close quarters, and like people will put up their defenses. Yeah, so it's just a way of like coping with living in the city. But if you meet people at a bar, talk to people at a bar, people will be open, and like people will actually socialize. So that was the.
Alcohol can do that.
I see. Yeah, sure.
So, I don't know if Elizabeth mentioned to you, but we tell people they will be bored, lonely, and depressed while on our program. Were you?
Yeah, at certain points, doing seeing an exhibition, I think like I've done quite a few solo activities. Like some of the exhibitions, I was not as engaged. I was like, okay, I'm not particularly interested in the subject. I might get through this quicker. I think I appreciated like the times that I could like find a cafe with Wi-Fi, and I could actually try to write and blog a little bit.
So that you weren't bored or lonely or depressed?
I think it was a way for me to, like, how do I keep myself engaged?
Can you give me an example of when you were lonely?
I think when I was visiting the Southport Sea Museum, a lot of the ships weren't open, so I only got to see one ship. Excuse me. And after that, I spent some time walking along the pier. Yeah. So I think this is also one of the effects of travel. Like if I don't have a travel companion, we can't tell the same story, or we can't really have the same memories. You know, and when I go home and I try to tell someone, oh, I went to see this, and like some percentage will listen politely, some percentage will have questions, and the rest will be like indifferent. So I think I've experienced this, like I'm starting to experience this more, because my last couple of trips, like around Southeast Asia, I did it by myself as well. Like I worry that I won't be able to retain the memory as well, and I don't get to share that memory as much. Yeah.
Do you feel, we hope that people will feel more independent after our program? This is one of the reasons we have people do so many things alone. Not because we are torturing you or trying to make you depressed, but because so much of life is spent thinking internally and not necessarily always exchanging those thoughts. So even though sometimes it's not so much fun while you're going through it, the bored, the lonely, and the depressed, we think that it is a good experience in the program in terms of preparation for life afterwards, and even the program itself.
I think it was like talking in the therapy sessions. I think it was a way to work through some of my concerns and become like more okay about where I am in life. So it's more like working on self-acceptance. Like if I'm okay with where I am in life, it will be easier for me to extend it to other people as well. That whatever they're doing, they're fine. Yeah, I actually, as a freelancer, this is something that I think about, being able to be independent and manage that a lot. So this has been very complementary to what I experience. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Food. Did you make food? Did you buy food? Did you enjoy food?
Yeah, I was sharing with Elizabeth that it's easier to be healthy, to eat healthy here, because there are so many options for bulk, like vegan food, like well prepared food. And after 2 weeks, I realized, oh, okay, if I'm just eating healthy, I'm not tasting everything. So after that, I started making an effort to try more different foods. I really enjoy like Mexican food. I enjoy Middle Eastern food. So it's still on my list. I should try and try things like Ethiopian food, things that are not as available in Singapore.
So it sounds like being here has made you think about your normal sensations about things, but it also sounds like you are very consciously now trying to push yourself, to make sure that you try new things, that you don't get comfortable in what you were doing. This is very good.
Yeah. I'm aware that like certain things we get set in certain ways. Like for health, we always make the same food choices. But there should be there's still space for exploration, and there's still balance, and so that we don't miss out on other activities or experiences. We can experience the full range of life. Yeah.
Okay, you've been to a lot of music performances here. You went up to Harlem and you sang?
Oh, I listened to Parlor Jazz at Marjorie Elliott's.
Right.
Yeah. So that was like a very enriching experience, because it's something that very experienced artists can do. They're just playing so effortlessly. They're playing from somewhere deep inside. Yeah, and I enjoy jazz, through Lindy Hop, but most of the time I'm dancing and not paying that much attention to the music. So being able to sit and people were really enjoying the music as well, So the atmosphere was very communal, that we were all partaking of this moment. So that was very good.
Okay, so you went to Washington, D.C., the political militaristic capital of the United States. What was your sense of Washington?
the streets were more open, like the way um, the city was laid out was different. Um, I enjoyed seeing the monuments because like Singapore is land scarce, so there are not too many places that can have this can have create this great scale, this grand scale. Um, I think when I was walking with the host, Casey, um, Casey also pointed out. Did you notice like the demographics? Like there's some younger people um, on the streets because like maybe they're here for school or they're going to work in trying to be a congressman or woman, and it was something that I kind of like had anticipated about New York, that a lot of people in New York are in the 30s, you know, coming to succeed in their career, not as many, not as demographically diverse. Washington also had a lot of like residential areas that were very picturesque, like the use of colors, like the colors were more vibrant. We went to a couple of bookshops that were very different as well. One was very well organized. One was like a little bit anarchic, and there was like an installation. There were like statements, like for each category of books, there were like interesting statements that went along with it. So it was fun, yeah, and yeah, I think also like the host pointed out a lot of things that made it very interesting.
Now you know that we try to keep you away from art in New York for the most part because we want you to experience unfamiliar things, and the art world is a familiar place for us. But what did you think of the art that you've seen in New York and the structure supporting the art? The galleries.
I think there are like a lot of resources because the museums like are very well presented and very thoughtfully presented as well. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that there's always a challenge for funding and getting support because like in my mind, my impression like America is like so much more liberal and so much, you know, so things are a lot more open, you know. So I'm always surprised to hear that okay, working in the arts is there's this challenge. I'm also a little bit surprised that art is not as open access. Like at the museums, yeah, I mean, it seems like like some people are favored more than others. When I think my first exposure of art was that it's very inclusive. It's a place where people find expression. It's a place where people can learn a lot of things outside.
Your impression at home or here?
My first exposure of
personal.
Yeah, art, which was through like drama classes. You know. It's a little bit challenging to see that there's such different expectations of what the art industry is or what the art industry represents for people participating in it. And now I can understand why there's so many more independent organizations trying to play a part in the industry and making a space accessible for other people that normally wouldn't have access to arts. Yeah.
There's a fair amount of criticism in the art world that many cultures have quickly adopted Western art. So we saw it certainly in China in the first generation. Now we're in maybe third generation of artists in China after the switch to the Western market sensibility. Do you know what I mean? Are artists in Singapore wrestling with this issue of identity versus Western imagery and content? What is the
there I did a project on documenting the theatre scene to celebrate 50 plays of Singapore last year. I saw that in the 60s to the 70s, actually a lot of plays did talk about national identity and talk about political influences in Singapore a lot more. But by 80s and 90s, there was maybe we were getting more comfortable with the idea of being a mix of East and West. And by 2000s, identity was not such a key subject anymore. Actually, a lot the plays were more about experimenting with different styles. So I think some parts of Singapore, some artists are more comfortable with expressing themselves as a mix of East and West. They can express it quite well, I think a lot of the art that does well in Singapore is conceptual art. But I think it's also an individual's sense of self-identity, whether they come to reconcile with where they are and who they are, what has shaped them. Yeah. So I think I thought about this a lot more because I was interested in traveling, and the more countries I traveled, I still didn't see what made Singapore Singapore. It was only after not traveling for a while, and then I noticed that actually one of the first things that Singaporeans notice about different cultures is what are the rules and regulations, what are the parameters. And I think that's something that a lot of Singaporeans are they always know, they always try to sense where the parameters are, and then they encounter the culture.
And the artists are trying to play with those parameters and go out of them, or are they working within the system more?
I do see some artists trying to do work questioning about use of public space, what gets acknowledged, what gets marginalized. I also see a lot of young artists actually leaving and doing work elsewhere, and then they just receive influence from wherever they have moved to. And there's even an academic who has been writing and publishing in one of the local papers that to truly experience he questions the way that Singaporeans are experiencing multiculturalism, and he also suggests that we actually need some space as a nation to develop identity away from the national identity. People need space to actually experience and have a chance to self-define before having such a strong influence of national identity being put on them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is only going to be a topical question because when people watch this years and years from now, they're not going to know who Donald Trump is, maybe. But you have been here during a particularly interesting time in our politics. What do you think?
I have been following the news, and also there's a lot more coverage on politics in American media than in my local country. Like we don't cover our politics with such great.
Ours is more
variety.
entertaining.
I my impression of Donald Trump is that he's a businessman and he's a media personality as well because he's done some reality shows. I I I'm not I don't have that much information about him on his views. I am a little bit surprised he's representing on the Republican side. I'm I'm not too interested in what he would have to offer because I would question his ability to have a strong team and have everything working well together and run smoothly. I think because I came to New York, I'm slightly more familiar with Mayor Giuliani and Mayor Bloomberg, and if he had thrown his hat in the ring, I would have paid a lot more attention because they saw New York and they saw New York during difficult times, you know. So that's a lot more proof of what they can do and how they can rally people to them.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, we're jumping around here. An interesting situation that happened with another fellow. They were not in New York, but in another city. And as you know, we give you programming all the time, but we also give you a free day here and there. And the interesting thing that we found was that when we didn't give somebody a schedule and they had a free day and they didn't know exactly what to do, that was the time that they felt lonely and not directed in a way. So on one hand, we think maybe, oh, we're giving you a free day. You can do what you've been thinking about doing that you haven't had time for. Is that how it worked, or was it more confusing?
I have experienced that in the past, that when you're given total freedom, sometimes you become disorientated and you don't know what to do with yourself. But because I know this better about myself now, and this program was like 6 days active, 1 day free day. I took the time to conserve my energy a bit and to catch up on things or to catch up on the reflection, and I found those were the days that I could write better and I could produce something that was more true to what I was experiencing. I was not super ambitious and said, okay, I must go and see this, I must go and do that, and I think I'll do it. I have I'll do it at the end of the program. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have 3 more questions only for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is going to be, tell me what you really enjoyed. The second one is, tell me what you really hated. And the third one is, tell me what you are going to take away from the program.
Okay. This is still fresh on my mind, so I would say I really enjoyed fencing because it's
Unexpectedly.
yeah.
Good.
Because it's also like a bit of there's like a attack and parry, and I wasn't sure if I was able to do that well. I'm not very confident in asserting myself, and in that situation, you have to assert yourself.
So you would do it in your head, and this time you had to do it physically, and now you feel more comfortable to do it in your head?
I think I think it's like building up tolerance, like doing something difficult and then like getting to stages of overcoming it. So yeah, I mean, like the people that I was playing with, they had good sportsmanship. They said like, no, don't worry about attacking, just do it. And they said this is how you learn. And
It's
those
expected.
those are the things that they kept saying that kept me going. So that was something that I really enjoyed. And I don't think I had very low experiences. I don't think I had any things that I really hate. But I do think it was still hard to get underneath the skin of New York and what makes New Yorkers tick. And when I was talking to Jean Barberes yesterday, he said like, even if you stay here for a long time, you're still discovering things that lie under the surface. So don't think I have a very strong hate experience. What I will take away from this is that life is as varied as many people there are. I used to think that, okay, if you're talking to an artist, like don't assume certain things, like because each artist is as different one from another. And I think I'm going to take this approach and apply it more with people, because maybe at one time, like Singapore, we just received information from like conventional sources. There was a newspaper. We didn't have the internet then. Like our education system was much more uniform. But right now, so many people have studied overseas. They're reading information from internet. They have so many influences on how they think and how they view life. It's actually getting more and more diverse. So to assume what is a typical Singaporean would also be getting harder and harder. Yeah, so I'm going to take this art approach and try to apply it to a broader aspect of my life. Yeah.
So overall, it's been a good and challenging experience for you.
Yeah, overall it's a positive experience.
Excellent.
Yeah. And thank you for like giving me the time, and also and I realize it's given me the space to think about things that I would not have thought otherwise. Yeah.
I think the one thing that to suggest to you to take away is the way that we make our selection processes. We work very hard not to do it in the traditional way of asking somebody who is well known to recommend somebody else who is well known, or always going with people that have higher reputations. We have found that there are a lot of people who are really smart, really sensitive, really thinking people that don't always fight to the top. And we try to figure out ways to find the people that are really interesting and really worthwhile of the program by figuring out different ways to go in. So the person that recommended you, who was that?
Debbie Jane.
And why did she recommend you?
I think because we had a conversation about our cross-cultural experiences. So it was it was after a conference, but we had time. I met her on another day, and like we have some similar interests. I don't know her very well, but we have some similar interests like in archiving things, and she even did a piece about like what is unforgetting, like why what's happening with our culture and why are we not being able to retain certain things. Yeah, so we had some similar interests. I think also she has great powers of observation, because like we had this one talk and she decided this would be a good fit, but she also does something very interesting. She has pet snails, and she's able to identify like different personalities for each snails, even though they move at the pace that they do. So I think she has good powers of observation. So when I wrote in for the program and started seeing and understanding what it was, there was a very good fit, you know. So I've not like anticipated writing in for something so often, and it's like, yeah, it turned out to be something that I appreciate, I can engage with quite strongly, and yeah, and like hopefully I reflected and could journal about it as sensitively and truthfully about it. Yeah.
Well, we want you to take this idea back with you so that you give opportunities to people that aren't expecting them the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely, yeah, I would do that. Yeah. Because it's a time that Singapore is growing, it's changing and growing. So there's lots of people who may not anticipate a certain career direction and are switching or changing or pursuing what they're really interested in. So yeah, when I'm organizing events, I love encountering new people and bringing them together. Yeah.
Okay, well, Gracie Tiao, thank you very much for the interview. Thank you for being a great fellow while you were here. And we look forward to continuing to hear what you're doing.